Good morning everyone. Hope you can hear and see me properly. Do let me know in the comments here if you're live and I'm not coming in loud and clear, although it does look like I am. I'm not doing my rare mistake of not unmuting myself and speaking for 5 minutes just before in silence. Okay, interesting topic. It may seem like the same thing depending on what kind of person you are. But the question of whether you should focus on being less negative or being more positive or optimistic is an interesting one. Because I've met people who are naturally more positive, more happy, more outgoing. You have people who are more introspective, more analytical, and tend to forensically look at situations and make sure everything's in line, a perfectionist of sorts in terms of planning out the next step. And that can lead to over pessimism. And I think it's an interesting question. I think each person should ask themselves where they lean and where they may need to lean in the opposite direction to counterbalance a strong side of themselves that isn't really doing justice to kind of a better life that you might want, if that makes sense. Now, what prompted this? I asked, let's see here. I asked this question last week. What recurring issue do you keep struggling with? And there were a fair bit of comments on this. And one of them, which prompted this interesting question that I think is worthwhile asking yourself. Prince Revolver, he responded with a really interesting one that prompted this question of mine to you people. And thank you for the comment, Prince Revolver. He said, not trusting your gut instincts, which can create doubt and regret, combining that with not being a good friend to yourself can lead to a lot of stagnation. And this, I think, is very common to people I talk to. The self-reflection I had with myself years ago, having honest conversations with myself, but also with people who are willing to be honest and not just blame the world and they're perfect and all of that, where you really, if you don't talk well to yourself, if you're not fair to yourself, if you don't treat yourself like a friend, you're in for a world of hurt. You really are. To quote Jesse Ventura in Predator, a world of pain. Because if you talk down to yourself, and I have one or two people that come to mind in my life where the way they get motivated is to kick themselves. Oh, you idiot, you screwed up again. And that's how they motivate themselves via the negative. I've never really been inclined that way. So I can't say I've really worked on that and overcome that. So I've naturally tended to speak to myself not that harshly. I wouldn't say I consciously spoke to myself like a great friend, but I never talked to myself like an arsehole. I never did that. And so when I hear it's quite common for people to talk down to themselves and be negative to themselves, I find that really interesting because via default, I don't subscribe to that. When I feel like a person is being that way to me, it's not my world and it stands out a lot. This is probably why I make such an issue about noticing the person that's in front of you when you date somebody. Are they kind or are they treating you like crap and walking all over you? And I think a lot of problems the average common person has, and by common, I'm not belittling anyone. It's much more common than my reaction. I didn't have to work on it, but a lot of people maybe were talked down to by their parents. They talk down to themselves with the same inner voice, the same superego. Look it up in psychology if you like. And so it's very hard to go through life struggling because by default, you talk down to yourself and so do people you date and friends and bosses, that jobs you can't leave. You work overtime even if you don't want to. You don't speak up for yourself. You're always a worthless person that never does this or never says that. So I think, see, let's take a look at the poll that I gave, right? This was really interesting because I said, which would you rather be? More positive or less negative? And there's nothing wrong with either. I'm always trying, I lean consciously towards being more positive and more optimistic and being motivated to do things because by default, I'm not a negative person. I rant and joke, right? But I'm not a negative person. People who know me know I'm not a negative person. At best, I'm neutral, but I like being motivated towards the positive. But studies have shown that actually being less negative, focusing on letting go of forensically trying to, cross every T and dot every I before, you give yourself permission to make the perfect decision. It's not really the right way to go. And yeah, motivating myself to be positive is harder for me because I feel like if I have to motivate myself to be positive, it feels fake to me. It's like I'm trying to be somebody else or feel what somebody else should feel genuinely in that moment. And I haven't gotten there yet. Letting go of holding on to negativity like a child holds on to their toy, though, is easier, makes me almost makes me laugh at how childish I'm being. And it's kind of like, all right, come on, time to grow up, like time to have the cold shower and wake up kind of thing. Whereas fake positivity for me, I understand why people can't. When I hear people trying to Tony Robbins themselves in a fake way, like talking to themselves in the mirror when they're upset or depressed or anything, I fully understand why it's really hard, because it's really hard to fake what you know to be true and how you know you feel. So I would say that it is much more worthwhile to concentrate on being less negative, because for me, negativity is like a locked door that you're trying to beat on. But if you open it, you're open to conversations. You're more likely to listen. You're not approaching conversations as a debate, trying to be right, trying to justify your biases. So being by default negative is a firm, locked position that you and other people have to fight yourself through. And if you're comfortable with your negative default, you won't see it as a locked door. You'll see it as comfortable safety. Nothing can get through. I like this place. The world makes sense. The world is flat. So it's an interesting one. I'd like to hear your comments. If you would like to leave a comment on this, whether it's better being more positive or less negative, and your experience with this, leave a comment with 3 smiley faces or yellow circles if you're here live during the live stream. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. There's just at a cursory search on Google, I've already had this discussion with people, but I wanted to kind of look into it for a bit. And the overwhelming quasi-science of psychology and also the literature and the testing out there suggests what I've always thought in the conversations I've had with people that are trying to kind of see what's actually more useful and practical. Obviously, there's a place for being positive, being more positive or being less negative, but what's actually more practically implementable? And the organizational psychologist, Adam M. Grant, some of you guys might have come across him. I don't really know too much about him, but in researching a little bit of this before this chat with you guys, he confirmed what I always suspected. He says, optimism has a little bearing on health. Avoiding pessimism matters more. 61 studies, 221 people. Health is predicted more by the absence of pessimism than the presence of optimism. Well-being isn't about expecting the best. It's about making sure you don't assume the worst. Now, this is kind of interesting to me. Again, I'll again touch on, because it's very important, about how you talk to yourself internally. Because if you talk to yourself negatively internally, you've got a bad friend in your head. You kick yourself because you're at every mistake you make, which will make you not take any calculated risks. It'll make you not be brave. It'll make you not go after and do what you want. And you'll get comfortable with the friend that's always there, that talks bad to you. And to keep that friend that always talks bad to you, you'll continue to do things that will make that friend talk bad to you. Because if, God forbid, you do something positive and you're successful, you don't have a friend anymore talking to you. You're on your own. Now you have to make friends with people in the real world and get out of your head. So it's subconsciously kind of daunting without realizing it. I come across a lot of people where when I chat to them, especially online, guys that are stuck and trying to figure things out intellectually, over intellectually, and they may not, it's not their fault. They might not have a lot of friends or any friends in the world. They find it hard to form relationships and they really feel isolated. And the only connections they have are virtual ones, of sometimes echo chambers, where they just confirm their biases, and it's a way of, via the negative, feeling secure. And in a more scientific term, it's a apophatic way of certainty rather than a cataphatic way of certainty. Cataphatic means by action, going forward, knowing you're right by the positive, and apophatic is knowing you're right by the negative. So it's an interesting question. I've got a few questions that I think I see on the stream. Let me have a look at them. Yeah, Malay says, I find neutral helps me more with some positive attitude. Yes, again, it depends what your default is. If your default is to put the shield up, it may behoove you, to use an old term, or might be good for you to consciously try not to always be defensive when you're confronted with that feeling, right? With me, I work on certain things with my own character where I know I would rather be a different way. For instance, not jumping to conclusions or interrupting or waffling on conversations and things like that, because our natural default is to act a certain way and run down that hill. And afterwards, we're embarrassed that we did it. So if you're a person that by default puts the shield up and defensively tries to be correct, you might need to work on not grabbing the shield or the sword in conversation in reaction to things that make you uncomfortable. But if you're a overly positive, overly nice person, you need to put up some boundaries. So you kind of say, hang on a minute, let me check the environment a little bit before I just say yes to everything. So if you're by default a no person, you have to be convinced to say yes, or you're by default a yes person and have to be convinced to say no. Like a lot of guys that go out there, they keep saying yes to good-looking women, to beauty, and it's really hard for them to objectively say no because they're not observing what's in front of them. You need to find out where you lean. Boffin says, can only speak for myself, but I really don't enjoy hanging out with pessimists. Gets old fast. Yeah, I know what you mean, Boffin. I think without going into a private conversation, Boffin's mentioned to me that sometimes when he's online in certain service and he's trying to do the positive and be involved in chats and things like that, all well-meaning, you just get a flood of negative people. And often all it takes is one overly negative personality that just consumes all the oxygen in the room. And it just brings everything down. A person you don't have to be looking for solutions, but if you're there with the negative hammer, hammering your point home, it's demoralizing for everyone else. Like, I don't like these people that like to feel tall by putting other people down or putting the conversation down. Quaz says, to the topic, both Oprah mindset and black pill are the same. Heroic risk analysis and imposition of good value is hard. Yeah. I find that also being aware whether you're nervous or afraid, like when you take one extreme position over another, a survival aspect, defensive one, why are you overly optimistic? Why do you have to say yes to every pretty thing? Why do you have to say no to every good opportunity? And it's only the person that's willing to look in the mirror, take a breath, and look at their own interactions and other people, even when you're in front of other people, noticing how they're talking to you in the group. You're calm, you're observing, you're listening, and you notice the way they're interacting, and it's not the way you would want it, and it's not healthy. It's up to the person to have that observer mentality for themselves and for the interactions they're having with other people. It's great to be introspective, but don't be hard on yourself. Don't be negative. But then a lot of guys are so hard on themselves, and they get in front of a pretty girl, for instance, and it gives them a reprieve from being in their negative mindset. It's almost like a holiday. They're on vacation. Pretty, new place. You take the lead. You anesthetize me with another world where I can just lock off my negative mindset. Solace Among Men says, less of anything leaves room. Yes. Yeah, minimalizing is a reason why minimalism is very popular for people who are consumed with too much and they can't work it out. It's a herd of cats. They need to sort of take a break, take a step back. It's a reason why van life is very popular, or was a while ago. Having less, letting go, not being negative, the absence of things is often the solution, not just stacking on more. I came across a study about subtraction. Who was it by? I think it was the website Behavioral Scientist. Just quickly, if you want to take a look yourselves, it's by Behavioral Scientist. I'll copy and paste it in the comments here live so you guys can see it. And it talks about why subtraction can often be the answer rather than adding more information. I see a lot of the echo chambers online, the perfectionists, the utopia builders, are just stacking on defensive perfectionism rather than letting go of. They might be kind of thinking like a scared 5-year-old, and they're not really coming to terms with answers. A lot of this, and I can speak definitely in my own case, was where I let go of more than I added. And it may seem kind of woo-woo to some people, but really being someone who overthinks and adds on and likes to think of themselves as being switched on and observant and clever and speaking a little better than the next person, your ego can take over, and your sense of certainty and your defensive sense of certainty can incline you to be much more of a negative thinker to everything aside from what you know to be true. So again, pay attention to it. I mean, if you know yourself to be right, what's the big deal of letting go of your certainty? You're fine. You're smart. You know what's what. You think you know men, women, relationships, how to conduct yourself. Fine. If you're so good, why are you getting so upset? Why the need to be right? Why the need to debate with feminists online? Why the need to? You don't need to. If you feel you need to, if it's kind of an addiction where you need to, you need to take a look at your sore spot. If it's not offering you solutions, I kind of find it a waste of time these days. I can have discussions and conversations about the age-old thing that I used to discuss and debate over 5, 10, 15 years ago in relation to, men, women, all that stuff, the world and everything. And I can nod there, but I always want to bring it back to the personal. It's like, what have you done since? What have you learned? What have you let go of? What have you gotten better at? What revelation after letting go, what revealed itself that you never would have discovered if you didn't let go of something or you weren't so negative? Those things are really interesting to me. Those are the solutions, not the ontological, structural solutions of who left versus right, who's getting elected, who's going to save me from the future, or who's going to make my future worse. At the end of the day, proximally, it's up to you. Yes, outside forces like the world and government and women can affect you to a degree, but then also you can avoid crazy and watching crazy and being entertained by crazy. You really can do a lot with, and think of, on the topic of negativity, how much negative content do you watch? Think about that. That fosters your already negative, defensive 5-year-old don't hurt me mentality. That really locks the door and doesn't allow you to go your own way or be positive or come up with your own idea and be damned with what the rest of the guys or girls or government or women or anyone wants from you. This is correct. You're being unfair. Leave me alone. I'll do what I want. You do what you want. I'll make my mistakes. You make your mistakes. Yeah, but that's not correct. And 75% of something. I don't care. I don't care. Live your life by that. I don't care. Yeah, but you're wrong. Go away. You're acting like a chick. Shaming doesn't work. Go away. Anyway, any more comments? Neanderthal, how are you, man? He says, I'll seem too negative, but in reality, I'm scared. Scared of getting a too miserable life. But almost all people see it as being negative. Make any sense? Yeah. You're worried about making a mistake. You don't want to make your life worse. If you've made mistakes or you're embarrassed and you want to get better and you don't find the language or you don't have a little step of courage to go in the direction and test if it is the right direction. I understand not wanting to screw up anymore. It's a very real thing, and I don't mean to shame anyone about it, but the only way through it is, the only way past it is through it. You have to keep trying in a smarter and better way for positive outcomes, for solutions. The easy, safe outcome is to do nothing and to defend yourself against every conversation that might ask you to step outside your front door of your thinking or literally outside your house. But I do get what you mean. Scared of having a miserable life. I understand these guys, especially who have gone through hell in relationships or a part of their life, they've had a really big trauma. I understand how awful it is. But the thing is, do not do it exactly the same way, and don't think about it the same way, and don't act the same way. If you had some wretch who destroyed your life, it doesn't mean you never have friendships or relationships with anyone else. You can choose not to. But if you're lonely, miserable, you can't sleep, you're neurotic, you have a lot of problems in being on your own. And for you, it's like, well, this hell is better than the other hell. Is it? Which one's less painful? One pain is more intense, but it lasts a short amount of time. Someone breaks your heart and whatever, you move on, you're free again, you can make different choices. But the pain of continually being alone, and that's better than the intensity, the low-level pain across your whole life. You need to make a decision whether that's a price you're willing to pay. You're not feeling the intensity of pain every day like you did when someone traumatized you in a moment, you had a traumatic experience. But if you have to go through something that risks some sort of trauma, but take a calculated risk where that risk is very low, but then on the other side, your life is better. And you never have to look at that risk ever again because you've overcome that. You've got the evidence of going through it. Again, this is kind of my solution-based positive thinking that we all should be sort of thinking about, not just sort of don't do that, avoid that landmine, don't do that. Statistically speaking, the stats say don't do that. And it's like, I'll never do anything. The only certainty is one day we're all going to be buried. That's it. Then there's no point to anything. There's no point to get on the dance floor and dance and do your own weird thing, to make your own, aim for your own little victories that mean something to you. Al says, you should do a video with Spetsnaz. Yeah, I should. I haven't, I contacted a couple of guys, Quaz and Spets. I'd love to do a conversation with them, especially because I think a few of you guys find a lot of value from both of them. I think I saw Spetsnaz, not Spetsnaz, Quaz was here earlier. So Quaz, let us know if you're still up for a chat, and we'll do a recording. And I think that'll be a good value, especially since I haven't really done long chats with those kind of old faces since before, the bug out there. So it would be interesting now, after a couple of years. I've gone through a lot of changes, as you guys know, but people who have changed, how your thinking has changed, what is still correct, but where you're flexible, what is still correct and what you sympathize with men and the world and stuff. But now you no longer kind of plant your flag there. You can talk about it, but you're no longer there. You're living over here now. So it would be really nice to have a conversation with those two guys if they're willing, and see what comes out of where are we now, how do we think now, what solutions and what no longer works, how the world has changed where solutions no longer work. So it's not just that this solution works in perpetuity, it's that the world doesn't allow it to work as effectively maybe as it once did. For instance, MGTOW worked much more effectively, as far as I could see, 5 to 7 years ago, because of the quality control and who was leading it, so to speak. Not that there is any leader, but you know what I mean. The consensus of what it is now. But in terms of the popular channels now and the demographic and the way they speak about it, it may be the same name, but the conversation for me is very, very different. So it would be interesting to have a conversation with those guys. No risk, no reward. Yes. Yeah, I think everyone has this really nice conversational we've probably all done it with friends and family in our lives at one time or another. I can almost guarantee almost all of us living in a big city in a Western country have done this. What would you do if you won the lottery? Everyone loves that. Everyone wants I want the world with no risk. I don't want to get off my couch. That's the extreme fantasy that we've all entertained, and it's a nice conversational, lighthearted conversation. I get it. But unfortunately, 99.9 recurring percent of us are better off, so we don't waste our time and life, to do something. Otherwise, you'll feel empty. Who was it? Was it Aristotle that said, we are what we constantly do? Therefore, all this overthinking is a waste of time if you do nothing. So who you are is actually your habits, your practice. Who you are is not what you think. So you are what you do, not what you think. So spending too much online, anyway, that's another discussion. But yeah, take a risk and act on it. And without action, it sounds so cliche, but it's cliche because it's been repeated probably by the Oprahs of the world. But you will gain more self-confidence that you tried something, whether it failed a certain way and you tried it again, or it worked when you tried it the best way you thought how. You get confidence because it's real. It worked. Or it didn't work that way, but it might work this way. You gain confidence in working it out by putting your hands on it, by trying it out in your life. Talking to a chick on a date the way you stand up for yourself and you know what's right and you know how to articulate yourself in a video, in a chat room. Do that in front of a person. So when you test it out, that builds confidence that, yeah, I've got the evidence behind me. I did that. It wasn't just in my head all the time. It wasn't a secret in a locked box in my private world that never gets unlocked in the public world. All right. Any further comments regarding this topic of, are you too much of a negative person? And do you think you need to be more positive? I'll read some more of the comments under the under the poll that I put up. It's really interesting. It's almost neck and neck. It's almost like the population of women compared to men in the Western world, 51% compared to 49%. Or has it increased now? Is it slightly more? Let's see. Body Knowledge says there is a narrow line between being honest and being negative. Let me increase. There we go. Peg, how are you? She left a comment. Well, you do have a choice. Yes, that is true. If you're conscious, you've got a choice to try. I know it's not easy. You've got a choice to try and act in that moment with your prefrontal cortex, knowing what you're doing. You are choosing to act more a certain way or be aware of how you're acting or not acting and adjust and modify yourself in that moment. So you do have a choice, especially in the moment, if you can remember. I know we forget, but if you can remember. One has to weigh the positives and negatives realistically, not delusional positive nor forever drowning negative pessimism. Life is full of ups and downs. How we roll with the changes and challenges makes a difference. Sometimes self-fulfilling prophecy, good or bad, can be the case. Yes, take the appropriate steps accordingly, choose wisely. This is important. You've met people that are, by default, overly positive. You think relax, tone down the smiling and the energy. Some people are just exhaustingly positive, right? I'm probably lexically exhausting, but that's another thing. But there's some people, stop laughing. There's probably, by default, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're negative and if you're positive. What's the cliche? A negative attitude never resulted in a positive life. And I think that's generally true. That by default, if that's the way you are, oh, well, look, but what about this could go wrong? Or that could go wrong. Yeah, sure. If you do all of this, human, you have a better chance at dating. But what about women in this? It's like, oh man, if you're going to look for the world to be perfect before you try and get a little piece of happiness for yourself, it's like, enjoy your dark, sensory deprived room of certainty. It's a simple, like, I'm not going out. It looks like it might rain. I don't know. I'm not getting in the car because there's a chance. No matter how you drive, no matter what you do, like, come on. David P., how are you? Longtime supporter. I spend much of my life around negative people, so I can always be more positive. I feel there needs to be a good balance between positive and negative. One can't be a Pollyanna all the time, nor can they be a grump. Acknowledgement of the situation and circumstances, acceptance of them, and sincere desire plan to change sounds right to me. Yes. Again, I think it's not necessarily being balanced, but being aware of what the situation calls for. Or are you really leaning towards negative and you're aware of like, no, I need to balance myself the other way. I'm too negative. Am I too not positive? Am I talking too much? Am I listening enough? Am I shutting up? It's not about being in the middle, but looking at what's fair, or probably more correctly, what's healthy. Joe B says, being too positive about people got me badly burnt, financially speaking. Yes. I suggest a K-curve. Be positive with family and friends. Yes, people you can trust. I think you can let yourself be, if you're by default positive, the people you've learned to trust, they've given you the evidence that you can trust them consistently. You should feel logically more okay with letting the defensive guard down if you know you have a propensity to trust strangers and be taken advantage of. He continues, exercise prudent negative suspicions towards anyone who can cause harm. Yeah, especially people who are strangers, who you don't know, who are car salesmen, who are short skirts, who are the promise of whatever, you know. When you look at it, primitively speaking, we like attractive people, right? When you go on a date, you're being blackmailed by nature. Like, come on quickly, be positive, say yes to everything, or it's going to go away after the date. It's just don't be negative so you get the thing. Otherwise, you're not going to get it anymore. So everything is driving you to be overly optimistic and push away skepticism, not necessarily pessimism, but skepticism, like logical skepticism. But on the other side, there are a lot of cases where we're overly skeptical, where we just would rather be comfortable and we're being intellectually skeptical just because we prefer comfort. Not necessarily because we're after a solution that might require a little bit of effort or putting on your shoes to walk out your front door or open up. Todd, be more realistic. Yeah. What I really am, a simple, satisfied, single, happy man. Fair enough. Taradine says, it's tough to stay positive if you're surrounded by people, especially friends and family, who have a negative and defeatist mindset. Yes, I've been around those kind of people. You almost look like you're the awkward one for trying to be optimistic. Yep. Dude, sometimes when you're in a group of guys, especially online, and they're so determined and having fun and getting off on being negative and being black-pilled or whatever it might be, and it's like, I can't talk with you. Like it's kind of like going into a church and it's like, well, I got to respect the rules. This is the conversation. These are the rules inside these four walls. And it's very awkward. And you're very aware of how you come across. It's like, why am I feeling so awkward? I'm just trying to talk honestly. It's like, okay, yeah, these people are running the show. This is their house. He continues, logical solution would be to distance yourself from these people. However, it's bittersweet when you now have to go try seek positivity else, or you mean elsewhere, or just become a loner. It is, but you get to a limit of entertaining a fake world. I think if you're trying to be honest and real and you're trying to move away from where you've been stuck with faking and wearing a mask and pretending to do this and dating this way and saying things to make your family or a girl on a date happy, when you're tired of it and you're almost embarrassed of it and you find yourself in those conversations at barbecues and it's like you're holding your drink, it's like you're in your head, you're thinking about something you want to do at home. It's like, what am I doing here? Like, how can I have a conversation? It's really a sign to be more open and honest and let go of being more negative or fake positive and all those sort of things. I think it's a real sign of maturity to let go of bad ways of being and just being more real and honest without being rude. Hopefully your honesty isn't rudeness though. Neanderthal says, I would hope I could use my life experience better, but I don't have such a negative attitude. That's good if you don't have such a negative attitude. Chris says, interesting question. I think there is something called toxic positivity where everything around you is falling to pieces and people around you are ignoring reality and being overly optimistic. People using comments like positive vibes only. Yeah. Yeah, I've been around people like that. Don't judge me. I don't want to talk about that. Like, it's just negative. Yet they're already talking negatively. They're frustrated about a certain topic around people and life and, oh my God, and the way the world is and politics and stuff. And you try and intrude with, real life, your world, pedestrian reality is like, yeah, don't worry so much about that. Like your life, you need to, stop being so negative. Like, Grift, actually, I don't think I've finished reading Chris's question. I think there are people with toxic positivity with everything around you is falling to pieces and people around you are ignoring it by being overly positive. People using comments like positive vibes only. Oh no, I did finish reading everything. David responded, he said, I used to know someone who was like this. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in early 2021. I told this person and their response was, I'm sure the doctors are wrong. Sorry, David, I'm not laughing at your situation. I'm laughing at the person's stupid response. I told this person and their response was, I'm sure the doctors are wrong. But even if they're not, I bet you your mum's going to be fine. My mother died 3 months later. Sorry, man, I'm not laughing at the situation. It's just ridiculous the way some people are. I told this person and they offered a half-assed apology as well as condolences. I've since removed them from my life. Yeah, good for you. Those hyper-positive people, they're the same people that they break up with you and they'll ruin your life and be vindictive and they'll say, I was too nice. It's like, you weren't objectively. If we had a camera following your behavior, you were the worst person in this situation. You ruined the other person. You were after revenge. You made them look bad. You laughed and you got joy out of seeing them in pain that you caused. And then you tell everyone, oh my God, it's so hard being who I am. I'm such a nice person. And everyone pats you on the back. Yeah, you'll find someone better. You just have to leave it. These people in the past would have been in a psych ward in a white room. But now they're not only people we need to accommodate and we bump into them and unfortunately have relationships with them, but they also run our talk shows, they run for office, they're in positions of power, they're our HR, our bosses. It's really, really tricky today. You really have to be switched on and find these conversations, these self-interested, self-protective boundary, good life, better thinking, better mindset conversations, much more interesting for your own good. It's not for them. It's not how can I get a woman. It's how can I be in a healthy relationship. It's not how I can get a chick. I don't care about the archetype of women, men, politics, left, right, the world, the polar bears or whatever it might be. It's like, how can I make my life sane, comfortable, and make sense? And then I will use that similar conversation in relating to the world and talking about, the environment and politics and all that. But if your mind is always, protect yourself from weirdos like this that David talked about when his mum was dying of cancer. These people are lost. You walk away from them. I remember an old friend of mine said he had a tough time with his ex like this. She was ultra positive into, crystals and astrology and ultra positivity. And anytime, and he's a physicist, right? So he went out with someone who's highly mystical and sort of very ephemeral in her thinking. And he is very, very grounded in the engineering mathematics of life. And he went nuts, and everything he told me was just the differences between two types of personality. One that was ultra positive, and every time he tried to solve a situation by having an honest, grounded conversation about reality, and having a sympathetic yet realistic conversation about reality, being polite and kind, she was like, I don't want to talk about that. He would say, well, it's A and B. And she says, I know what you're saying, but I don't feel that. I want it to be X. And he's like, oh, it's just worse if you want it to be X. It's A or B. And it's a nice A or B. But you have to walk away from these people. They have firmly locked their attitude behind a vault, and there's no fixing them. There's no being with them. Yeah, this is true too. Quaz says, life doesn't have a glib answer. Yeah, life is a conversational answer. It's not a meme. It's not a glib answer. It's a conversation you have with your head, the relationship you have with that, and then allowing that to come out through your mouth and talking that way with other people. And maybe someone else, say as an example, if you have a negative attitude in your head and you talk to yourself negatively, and you find it very hard to work it out on your own or even on paper, the answer might be finding people who are more positive than you or less negative or more neutral, and simply by the act of having a conversation with them, they can bring you out of your head through conversation and words and thinking, and slowly, neuroplastically, you can change how you respond to thinking. You can want to talk more, want to get it out more, rather than the herd of cats and the negative superego talking down to you like a bad parent. So yeah, life isn't a glib answer. It's not a meme. All these people love posting memes. The solution is conversation, and the solution is making sense of it through conversation. Human beings only figure things out through stories. And stories aren't memes. Stories are conversations. Stories are beginning, middle, and end in thought. And those things sink in. Those things can hit the road. The rubber can hit the road with action. But glib memes, they're bumper stickers. They're a sentence designed to elicit an emotional response, but they're not anything to elicit action. Yeah, they're kind of like, yeah, Monday I'll start my diet, but it doesn't actually make you change. It doesn't flick a switch where I'm no longer that person. I am this person now in the way I speak, in the way I choose to do things. But anyway, that's a different conversation. Any final comments on this issue? Not issue, but my thoughts on being less negative as opposed to just trying to fake your way through a mask or fake positivity that you don't really believe in. Let me know your thoughts below. We'll wrap the stream up in a couple of minutes. There's a delay. That's why I'll wait for your comments. But that's very interesting, where it's almost 50-50 when I ask, would you rather be more positive or less negative? If you had to choose one. And I think it depends on what your default is. What you automatically go to, say there's a certain topic or a challenging argument, or you feel a bit defensive or vulnerable. Where do you lean? When someone asks you a personal question, do you get defensive? Or I find it interesting when someone asks me, the amount of times I've been in front of a new person, whether at work, generally in the street or on a date, and they're like apologizing, like, I don't mean to be rude. Can I ask you a question? And my mind straight away goes to, awesome. I am so looking forward to what they're going to say. Whereas a lot of people are like, it depends, what are you going to ask? Because I'm going to get offended. I get offended very easily. So what do you lean towards? What is your default reaction generally? Do you need to be more positive or less negative? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. He just dropped a super chat. Thank you very much. Again, I forgot to say, if you would like your answer noticed, if I don't see it during all of you talking during this stream, drop a super chat, because I'll definitely answer that. Where is it? He says, nothing to say, have a beer. Thank you. Thanks for the donation. I appreciate it. If you have anything else to offer, guys, I encourage you to comment down below under this video. Drop a like, dislike, subscribe, join the channel. Do all that stuff that YouTube likes and thinks, well, I can't even think of a basic word. I'll mention posts. Come on. I'll notify. That's the word, notify. I'll notify you people on Human's next video. But yeah, YouTube wants you to engage, and engaging means you're clicking on stuff, you're thumbing up, you're thumbing down, you're joining, you're commenting, whatever. Sorry to be trite, but that's just the way the machine wants you to act. Anyway, if any of you have a microphone, jump on Gilded after this. Usually a bunch of us jump on there and continue this conversation. But I think this is a really important, simple, yet really kind of powerful thing to think about. Do you need to lean more towards being positive? Are you more of a neutral person? You're not by default a negative thinker. So you probably need to be more positive to improve things and improve the quality of your life. But if you're by default negative, defensive, you're always saying no to everything unless it's perfect, you probably need to be less negative. And as I've said, studies show that being less negative, which is easier to do, mentally speaking, it's much easier to let go and be less of something than it is to fake being something that you're not there yet. You can let go of something in the moment more than you can grab something that's far away and you can't grab it. Like a positive feeling. You need time to dissipate. It's much harder to fake positivity. It's much easier to let go of negativity. I know it's still hard sometimes, but studies show this, and I think intuitively everyone understands this as well. Anyway, I don't think there's any more comments. Thanks for the stream, everybody. how long have we been going for? Just under an hour. Beautiful time. Let's end it for once instead of me waffling on past this point. Join the chat on Gilded after this if you have a microphone. Feel free, please. It's free. It's open. The chat room is open 24 hours a day whenever you want to get in there. Drop in there and just wait, and someone else might come in and you can start a conversation. Have a good weekend, and leave your comments below. I'll see you in your next stream. And remember, try to be less negative. Don't fake positivity. And I think you will have better results doing this. So, goodbye. Have a good weekend and see you later. Bye.